other thing that hugely developed my storytelling was public speaking,
Yeah.
which was this realization that you have a limited amount of time in front of people. And there's not remote empathy. I mean, you can
Right.
see it, and you see it in people's faces.
Feel it almost.
You can, I mean, it's the cell phone thing. If you look, everyone's out in the audience looking at their cell phone. Well, you've just lost them. And you, by doing lots and lots of public speaking, which I've now done, you learn so many tricks about how to grab and hold attention, how to keep attention, how to have an emotional arc. And I used the term before, but it really is the byword, is that the people remember how you make them feel.
Yeah.
They don't remember what you tell them.
Right.
And you have to figure out how to make them emote. And storytelling is hardwired into us.
So before we start, a little context. So this conversation with Marc Randolph was recorded live inside one of our classes. So Marc is the co-founder of Netflix, but what made this session special wasn't the origin story. It was how honestly he talked about the messiness behind it. He makes a point that applies just as much to writing a book as it does to building a company. The idea you start with is almost never the thing that works. What matters is iteration, feedback, and being willing to tell the story as it happened, not the polished version that we tell later. If you're building something, a book, a company, or both, this conversation, it's going to recalibrate how you think.
Certainly as an author, the most wonderful thing anyone can tell you is they liked it, and that they liked it for the same reasons that you hope they would like it. And certainly I hope people would like it for the writing and the stories, and they'd stop seeing it as a book and become more immersed in it. But in a lot of ways, people think, oh, entrepreneur, he became a writer. But I've been writing my entire life. Or maybe that's a little strong. I've been writing my entire professional life.
Right.
My first half of my career, I was a direct marketing person. I did direct response. I did mail order. I did catalogs. I did magazine circulation. All of these things are basically versions of remote empathy, where you're trying to understand how someone is going to react without seeing them, to manipulate them in a positive way, using your words. And so I wrote thousands of pieces of direct response copy, letters, product descriptions. I mean, all those things. And little by little, you kind of get a voice. You learn that it's more important how you make somebody feel than what you describe to them. I mean, it's all these things. It's trial and error, with the beautiful thing, which you do not get in a book the same way, that you find out almost immediately how effective you were.
Feedback.
Yeah. I mean, and stupid things, like certainly a direct response letter has all kinds of technical writing pieces to it. I don't mean technical, you're writing with technical things, but for example, use of a PS, use of indentation, use of bullets, making things skimmable, having a really strong lead, not bullshitting people, not rambling on. I mean, all these things which make strong writing. And so, yes, writing a novel, in this case, a memoir, was different in form. And I had to plunge into that in my characteristic, why do something when you can overdo something manner.
Right.
But the actual part of being able to have words come out of my head and go onto paper or onto digital paper was something I've been doing a long time.
What was that process like for you of building up the content that became the book itself?
That was probably one of the more valuable things that came out of writing the book. Was I learned a tremendous amount about my life, if I can put it that way. And in particular, the part of my life which started in 1996, 97, when the original things began happening that led to the launch of Netflix, and certainly the things that happened over the ensuing 6 or 7 years that are covered in the book. Because first of all, these are things that happened to me 16 years ago. So your memory is pretty spotty to begin with. But also your memory is very, very colored, not just by where you were, what meetings you might have been in, what happened to you, but colored by your reactions to things. And it's very easy to lose sight of what actually went on, especially when you have something which would be perceived as being successful, as I think Netflix was,
Mm-hmm.
to see very clearly all the things you did that were brilliant and smart, and not recognize, well, no, that was in spite of you, or that you did something actually very stupid. So it allowed me to be very introspective, but it was also a chance for me to go dig into these boxes of archives that I had just compulsively kept and stored in the attic for years, and go through page by page, really trying to piece things together, trying to understand as something as ridiculous as the cap table. In other words, who owns what and how that changed over time and who invested when, which I didn't really know until I dug into it. And perhaps the best part was going back and interviewing several dozen of the people who were there at the very, very beginning, and getting their insights and having them not only remember stories that I thought I knew differently, but remind me of things that had happened, which I had had no recollection about, but in fact were very, very interesting and colorful. Well, I'm sure the thing that you hammer on all the time is you have to be honest.
Yes.
Especially, in my opinion, with a memoir. And too many business books are basically glorified. Look at me. Look how smart I was. Look how amazing. And I explicitly did not want this book to be that, because what I wanted this to be was a true picture of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. I did not want this to be a Facebook story. I did not want this to be what Shark Tank. I didn't want this to be this glorified version of entrepreneurship. I wanted people to really see it. And to do that, I had to be tremendously vulnerable and honest. And I think I had the huge benefit, as I mentioned, of it being 16 years after I left.
When there's always these origin stories that I remember before I read the book, I heard all these origin stories about the rental price. There's all these things behind it. But the story of how this happened was really this process of an iterative approach. I think for folks that are writing books too, the iterative approach of finding their book is an important one.
I hadn't really drawn the parallel between writing a book and starting a company, but you're correct that the idea that you start out with very rarely, in fact, I'm even going to say never, becomes the final product. And certainly in companies, when you look at any single successful company, if you go back and look at what the true origin story was, they started out doing something completely different. Enough so that I've kind of become convinced that ideas count for nothing. They're fun to hear. It's fun to get pitched, but that's not important, because that idea is not going to last once it collides with reality. And certainly way back at the beginning, this is in 1997, as you pointed out, Reed Hastings, future co-founder there at Netflix, and I were both going to be out of a job and had a bunch of months of the other companies still paying our salaries to figure out what to do next.
Severance time.
Yeah, exactly. And he was going to go off and get a higher degree in education so he could become an educational philanthropist. But I was going to start my next company. And that's with the process you're talking about of brainstorming ideas. And it was pretty loose. I mean, at the time, because of that direct response background I had, I knew that I was going to do e-commerce, and I knew it had to involve personalization, and I knew it had to involve some of these characteristics that I saw the internet would empower. But other than that, we were wide open. As you mentioned, one of the things was personalized shampoo. Another was custom dog food. Another one was video rental by mail. But that was back when video was on VHS cassettes. So all these ideas didn't go anywhere. And it was only when we heard about that new technology called a DVD, which was in test market back in summer of 1997, that it occurred to us this actually might dust off this discarded idea for video rental by mail, because now there was something thin and light that maybe we could mail it a different way. And that led to kind of this experiment, which we did almost within 10 minutes of having the idea of. We turned the car around and mailed a used music CD to Reed's house to see whether in fact this idea had legs. But even then, the book is called, as you know, That Will Never Work. And it's because everyone said that will never work. There's Blockbuster, it's going to be downloaded soon, et cetera. And they were right. And as soon as we launched, it didn't work. And that began what truly is the entrepreneurial journey, which is where you try everything you could think of as you try to pivot your idea back and forth, hoping to find something which will lead you to that mythical, repeatable and scalable business model.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting thing. I think, especially, I mean, I've had the good fortune to go through, company building many times, but it is this, people think that there's this line and suddenly it's like, it's really messy and then it works. And it's like, that's actually like, that's a false thing. Like there's no promised land. There's just another land of it not working in a different way. But it's like those squishy balls where you squeeze it and one thing comes out and you push that one down. That's sort of like the process of creating anything good.
It is true that you're constantly trying things that aren't working, and that's just part of the process. But each time you try something that doesn't work, you've learned something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the bare minimum, you've now crossed one more thing off your list that doesn't work.
Right.
But ideally, it gives you a glimmer of hope and of a possible future direction.
Mm-hmm.
People surprise you, that they'll do something you didn't expect. They'll tell you something you didn't expect. Mm-hmm. And those little insights lead you to the next trial, which then doesn't work for a different reason. Mm-hmm. But rather than being this discouraging, lurching from failure to failure, in fact, that is the fundamental excitement of being an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. That is what draws people to it for the right reasons.